Hi, I'm Clark on Temptress, and today I'm going to talk about batteries for your boat, the big ones, the ones that run everything. Lithium is great. Lead is also great. It has some real advantages over lithium. I found a way to mix the two together and get all the advantages of both, and it's a lot cheaper. Over a year ago, I had the idea I wanted to put air conditioning in this boat, and I wanted to have weird air conditioning that I invent myself. It's successful. It's working. It's been running all summer, and it's doing what it needs to do. But the first step in doing the air conditioning, and in my case, it runs completely off solar panels and batteries. We don't use a generator on Temptress, is to bring up the batteries a little bit. Lead batteries, I have lead batteries on board, and I had a lot of them. And technically they would do it, but every night having a deep discharge into the air conditioning, well, we all know lead has a finite life. So I wanted to have lithium. At first I thought, well, I'll have some discrete lithium batteries just for the air conditioner, and then I'll build this cross-charging system, and I'll use the lead for the refrigeration and everything else. And I got looking into it, and I got looking into it deeper, and I started looking into the electrochemistry and the voltages and how these batteries work. This is what this video is all about. In short, what I'm going to be building a case for here is you can take lead and you can take a small amount of lithium and you can connect them right together if you do it right, and you get the advantages of both, and your batteries should last way longer than really either of the two. I've done this, and I've been running this system for a year and a half. I think it's time for me to talk about it on video and share my idea. This can save you a lot of money. Okay, let's talk about the batteries first. We have to have a basic understanding of how they both work. It's kind of about their personalities here. When you just have one kind, you really only have to say, does it have power in it, does it not? But when you're mixing them, you got to know more. Okay, lead. Lead's great. I mean, it's getting a bad rap right now, but it's still cheaper than lithium. You probably already have lead, so that's free. You know, I have a huge amount of lead on board this boat, and I didn't want to throw it away to go to lithium. That's just crazy because it's still good. Lead is tough as nails. As batteries go, if you want to have a battery that takes abuse, you want lead. Don't abuse it. It will last longer if you don't abuse it. But if you actually abuse the cells in a lithium battery once they're gone, you can mess them up real fast. Lead, you can overcharge it a bit. You can undercharge it. You can run it dead a bit. It'll hold up to it. It will take over discharge without, I mean, it'll do what it can do. It won't destroy itself. They don't like freezing, but they won't absolutely destroy themselves if you try to charge them on freezing. These are all things lithium have as problems. So lead has its advantages. Now, how they work electrically is you charge lead to whatever voltage you decide to charge them to, and there's regulators for all of this. If you've got an adjustable regulator, you can adjust the top voltage, how high they go. Now, on Temptress, I've always set that relatively low. I set it at 14 volts. You're going to have lots of opinion, but it's opinions. I have been running batteries on this boat for 30 years, and my best set of lead lasted me, I think it was 15 years, and they only failed because I left the boat in Florida to go back to house for several months, and a solar regulator failed and cooked them. So even if they had already been ready to die, 15 years means I'm not abusing batteries. Who gets 15 years out of a set of lead? So the lead batteries, back to that, voltage-wise, charge them up to whatever your peak is. I'm going to suggest 14. When you stop charging them and you just let them set, if they're good batteries in good condition and fully charged, they will come down to 12.8 volts all on their own. And it takes a little while because there's this concept of surface voltage, but it doesn't last long. If you turned on 3 light bulbs in 10 minutes, that'll probably be down to 12.8. At 12.8, which is the actual number of the difference between the two alloys of lead, the electronegativity number times the number of cells, but you can think of it as just 12.8, it's a magic number. If you pull power out, they're going to dip below 12.8. And if you charge them, they're going to go back up again, of course. What I'm trying to say is they would like to rest at 12.8 if you just let them sit. And if you do anything pulling power out, they kind of have to go below that if they're the ones supplying the power. Another thing about lead that I just want to mention is lead also has kind of a magic charging number. Now, you do need to charge lead all the way, and you do need to at least periodically charge it at 14 volts at least. But if you were to float charge lead, if you were to hold them at 13.2 volts, 13.3 volts right in there, they would have their longest shelf life possible. They're actually happier if you keep them trickle charged at that voltage than they are if you just let them set fully charged on a shelf. They would discharge themselves and eventually kind of do themselves damage. But if you can float charge them, and that's why you see these float chargers for things like if you're going to leave your car for a couple of years, hook this float charger up, or motorcycle batteries or whatever. It's just a charger that only goes to this low voltage and just keeps it there. Just kind of keep that in your pocket. That's something we're going to use later. Now, lithium. Lithium's tremendous. Oh man, lithium's got such advantages. If you were to put 100 watt hours into lithium batteries out of your solar panels and then try to pull it back out, you would get pretty close to 100 watt hours. Little loss. If you put 100 watt hours into lead acid batteries, I think on a good day you get 80 back. There's a huge loss to various things. So if you have some lithium in your system and you're using it right, you gain like 20% free lunch right there. Lithium can handle a lot of discharge cycles over its life. If you have a really big plate lead, I use L16s and they're about the biggest you can get and they have the longest life. Manufacturers talk about maybe 1,000 cycles. Lithium, I've seen very significantly higher claims, but the big point is you can cycle them more without their life coming to an end. On the other hand, there's a long list of problems with lithium. Lithium is touchy. You have to have this thing called a BMS, a battery management system, and it's right inside the commercial batteries when you buy them. It's actually part of the battery. The actual cells just hold power. The BMS says, somebody has broken a rule, I'm shutting you down. So it's like an internal circuit breaker that can reset itself. The things that you have to protect a lithium battery from is you try to charge them when they're too cold, it's like over. You try to overcharge them to a voltage higher than they can tolerate, again, you can burn them right up. I've done it with a little sample pack I was playing with. You can only charge them at a certain rate. You can only discharge them at a certain rate. Lithium also, all of its individual cells needs to be balanced against the other individual cells. And if you buy commercial batteries with a BMS built into them, they'll have facilities to take care of that for you. You really shouldn't have to mess with this. If you build your own, you really have to think about this and have a way of dealing with it. Lead equalize, sure, if you want. People will be happy to sell you gear to do it, but I don't do what is required to equalize lead, and I've had tremendously long lives in my personal experience. Okay, now let's talk about the voltage of lithium. Now, they have the same kind of a personality trait that lead does, except the voltages are different. I said earlier, I charge on Temptress to 14 volts. It's a perfectly good level to charge your lithium to. Technically, you can get a little more power if you go up to 14.6, I believe is the absolute peak, but I don't think it's a very significant extra amount. And it's safer to only go to 14. So I go to 14, and I have plenty of power. So you charge up to 14, you take the power away from it and let them set. Just like lead, they're going to come down to where their rest voltage is. For lithium, that's 13.2 volts. 13.2 volts, at that point, if you pull power out, their voltage will drop down. But unlike lead, which drops down in a very gradual kind of a thing, lithium tends to drop down to the 13.2 and just camp there until most of its power is actually out, and then it falls off a wall. We can use this to our advantage. You remember that deal about float charge with the lead batteries? What was it? 13.2, 13.3, in there. We're going to say 13.2. isn't that convenient? So what I do on Temptress is I connect all the batteries together. Now you can't just connect them together, and I'll get into that later. You've got to do this kind of in a gradual way. But once they're all married together, as long as you leave them together, you can do a lot of stuff. Charge them up to 14. Both batteries are accepting power. Of course, they work their way up to 14. But when they get to 14 and then the amps level out, by the time the amps going into your entire system level out, basically all your batteries are as charged as they're going to get that day. Remove the charge source, sun went down, nothing you do on your own, and the batteries will drop down to 13.2, more or less. At that voltage, the lead would like to continue down to 12.8, but the lithium won't let them. It actually trickle charges the lead, and it's holding the lead at that float charge until the lithium can't anymore. And in doing that, it's making the lead's life like really long. Now the lithiums, if they're big enough, will easily do that all night and run your refrigeration and lights and what all else. In our case, air conditioning. And if you've sized it right, this is not a problem. So by morning, it's not uncommon, even when we use heavy loads, to still see 13.2 in the battery bank. Now, the lithiums are down quite a bit. The leads are still fully charged. They haven't been asked for anything. Solar panels come in, and everything gets charged. Repeat if necessary. Well, that's like a good day, with lots of sun during the day and minimal uses at night, or enough that fits your model of batteries. What about the day when you can't charge during the day? There's weeks with clouds. This is where the system becomes really useful. If you want to get through one of those week-long rainy periods where there just isn't enough sun to keep up, you would either need a huge lithium bank, which is like crazy expensive right now, or you need to do something else. Putting these together is really quite wonderful during one of those times. So first night, everything's fine. Next day, charging, but it doesn't really charge, so you're still using more power. By the next night, now you're down where the lithium starts slipping below 13.2. It goes down, it goes down. When it hits 12.8, and it's not in danger zone yet, not until it gets down to 10 volts, but it gets down to 12.8, well, the lead starts giving up amps. They start pushing the electrons. And the lead, in the case of what I'm going to suggest for you, is rather large. So it has no trouble going through whatever days you can go through. How I like to say it as a joke is like the lithium's doing the work. It's just this little guy, and he's picking up the weights, and he's doing the work every day, and he's just happy doing it, and he's full of energy. But occasionally, he can't handle the load. It's just too much. And basically the big old lead said, here, hold my beer, I got this. So the lead cycles, I don't know, depends where you are, of course, but maybe 10, 12 times a year does it have to be asked to go through its cycle. The lithium cycles every day, and lithium can do that. So lithium cycling every day, my argument is, lithium cycling every day, they might be the last lithium batteries you ever buy. They're okay with that. Lead cycling every month, well, they're going to be the last batteries you ever buy because they like this short number of cycles and being held afloat. So you can put these all together and have these advantages. Other advantages, back to the damage kind of thing. Lithium is not good at giving up a lot of power fast. Now it actually is really good at doing it, but it hurts itself in the process. So this is coming down to the C ratings and stuff, and you would look into this. But the short of it is, if you want to start an engine, you need to have a certain minimum size lithium battery bank, which is pretty expensive to be able to do that. Where we all know you can start an engine, like your V8 car, with just one group 27 lead acid. So I always recommend to everybody, you have some lead in your system that does that heavy lifting. Now let's talk about sizing. You want some lead? You want some lithium, if you were going to buy into this idea. Well, you've already got some lead, right? That's big enough because it's been big enough. If you add lithium to it, you will have more. Therefore, it's just gravy. So you need enough lead to get you through how long you want to go without a charging source. I like to go about 5 days. I feel comfortable with that. I don't like running generators, you might guess. Just use your existing lead if it's an okay lead. I'll get into that in a minute. Adding on lithium. How much lithium? Well, I think you need enough lithium, just enough lithium to get you through the average night. If you have a little more, more's better. If you have a little less, that just means the lead will get used a little bit over that night. Again, not a big deal. So if you say, I need 100 amp hours to run my fridge and lights and all my things throughout an average night, well, buy a 100 amp hour lithium. And if it's a slightly bigger night, the lead will help you out. But it'll only be a small use of the lead. You'll still get the advantages. Now let's talk about marrying them together. First thing is your lithium's new, so that's going to be fine. Is your lead up to snuff? And I'm going to give you a very easy way to define that. Fully charge your lead right up to the top. Then do what you need to do with whatever charge sources you have and get them into float. And notice how many amps it takes to hold them at 13.2, 13.3, wherever your thing floats to. Now, if you don't fully charge them first, this number will be higher than it really is. So make sure they're fully charged. Now, if your batteries are like really in good shape, it might take a half amp, a quarter amp to keep them at 13.2. That's great. That means that the lithium will be responsible for all of its normal night jobs like refrigeration and lights. Also, it'll be responsible for this part of an amp going into the lead. If your batteries are old though, and they have problems, you might see that it takes 5 amps to hold them at 13.2. You don't really want to marry these in with the lithium because now the lithium is going to be responsible for that 5 amps plus. So make your own decision, but that's how you decide if your batteries are still healthy enough to join the party. When you actually hook the batteries together, they're actually at different voltages. And this is the one time things could get a little dangerous. Probably the BMS would protect you if they're a good quality battery and you wouldn't actually see the danger, but let's do this right. Once they're together, there isn't a lot of amp flowing to make voltage differences because they're being held. Either the lead's being floated up by the lithium or the lithium's being maybe held down a little bit by the lead. But lithium have how we describe it is very low internal resistance. If you ask something for lithium, it will try and it will succeed right up to the point where it has to shut down. So if you took a battery, a big lead bag that was at 12.6 or 12.4, discharged a bit, and you took some fully charged lithiums that are at 13.3 and you lock them together, they're going, I want to bring everything up to 13.3 right now. And it will try to put out so much power. You would have huge sparks. You would have the lithium actually hurting themselves. You might actually melt wires because these will be really high amps. You just don't want to do this. Like I said, the BMS should shut them down, but then it comes back on and it would just try and try and try and it would be a problem. So, best thing to do is actually charge up your lead close to what the lithium rest voltage is before you bring them together. And the very best thing to do is to bring them together with a artificial resistor. Get yourself a big power resistor. They cost like nothing. And hook them up with that first until you see no amp flow. Let them equalize slowly through the high resistance. It'll get a little hot, but that's what power resistors do. That's why they look like that. And then once there's no amp flowing, then you can lock them together and leave them together. Now, if you use battery switches, keep that in mind. If you were to segregate them, you got to go through that process again before you bring them back together. I realize this is all complicated and a little bit scary. I really tried to get all the information in this video, but this is a huge investment and there is a little risk involved. So if you can work this out on your own, by all means, do it. But if you feel that you'd like a little bit of hand-holding, we've had this thing on Patreon for quite a while. The top tier in Patreon they all have perks. The top tier's perk is you can call us on the phone. Well, Emily's got a lot of talents, and I've got some talents. And people have been asking, can I just talk to you and work this through? I've helped people rewire their boats, all kinds of stuff. So that's available. If you pledge at that level, we'll set up a phone call. We'll talk this all through for an hour from your point of view, what your needs are for your boat. I'll help you size stuff. I spent so much time researching this and working it out. And then when I first did it, I was still expecting sparks, I was concerned. I imagine other people are in the same metaphorical boat. If you want some help, go to Patreon, line up that pledge level, give me a few bucks. I'll get some reimbursement for all my efforts, and I'll help you hold your hand, and we'll get you a good system. And you'll be saving so much money by being able to use your lead with your system. It'll pay off. I hope this was entertaining, enlightening possibly. Please use the comment section as one does, and all the normal stuff. If you think this was useful, thumbs up. It really does help YouTube know to promote this video. If you think you've got some friends somewhere that might find it interesting, there's nothing that helps us more than you sharing either a video or our playlist on social media, whatever. When people do that, we see our numbers go way the heck up. Thanks a lot, and bye from Temptress.